It's time for the meeting. Thank y'all. Appreciate it.
I'll call the work session of the Perry City Council March 19, 2018 to order. We have a forum. Item 3 is items of review and discussion. Item 3A is from the administration. Item 3A1 is a request for crossing guards.
Before we have this discussion, as I understand this involves the Westfield School, and I'm an employee of Westfield, I'm going to recuse myself for this discussion.
Is the attorney not coming? I started with that.
I don't know. Super along in the hall.
Well, is that required of him?
It's not required.
But it looks better for you to be back.
Yes.
Next week sometime.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about nobody saying nothing.
No.
That's right.
Okay, Mr. Gilmore?
Yes, in your packet, I provided to you a request from Westfield Schools for a crossing guard to assist primarily under traffic control. I don't think any or very, very few students have walked to Westfield, dealing with the traffic that they have at the school, both beginning of the day and ending of the day, US 41 South. Couple of options that you have, or a number of options that you have. The first one, of course, is you can say no. The second one is you can say yes, and that would be 100% cost of the cities to do that. Third way would be that I had suggested one policy recommendation with this, which was that the city would only provide the crossing guards on state routes because of the traffic volume. And on all the other locations, there would be no crossing guards provided. However, we will put up some traffic flashing devices. You may remember we put up one over by Morningside on Kings Chapel Road. If you were to follow that policy, then we provide a crossing guard at Westfield, we provide a crossing guard at Perry Middle School, we install warning devices at Tucker, and we cease the provision of a crossing guard at Tucker Elementary School and Morningside. Now, subsequent to that, another idea came up in which you would say, okay, fine, we will provide crossing guards if whoever the requesting entity is agrees to pay 50% of the cost. And I think that's actually the best of the options if we're going to do that. So, for example, if Tucker Elementary feels that's important to have a crossing guard out there, then the Board of Education or somebody would have to come up with 50% of the cost. This is going to be, I think, more of an issue, and the chief can fill in better than I can, but my understanding is that the police department's having difficulty finding people to be crossing guards at the rate of pay. It may be a situation where we cannot get people, period, but I think probably the first step would be that we would have to offer more money for the position. And if it's going to be more money for the position, then I think these other folks ought to contribute. The other way, if we do the 50%, then we see just how serious it is on the request. For example, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, as I remember, there was a lot of discussion on the importance of having a crossing guard at Morningside School. Everybody remember that discussion? Put up the flashing lights and all that. I still had to have a crossing guard. Excuse me. We lost the person who was working there. They had not been able to replace. We haven't put anybody else there. And nothing's happened, nothing from the school. So that is an indication, I think, that we will be willing to partner with these groups. But I don't think it should be a situation where the city has to pay 100% of the cost. Even more so, excuse me, which we've had to do on occasion, or maybe most time over at Perry Middle, I am concerned about tying up a certified police officer to take care of this duty. I think our certified police officers should be out on the road. Now, they may have to fill in an emergency. Everybody with me on that? Mm-hmm. But not 5 days a week over there.
Do we have any crossing guards now?
I believe we have one, don't we?
We have 2 positions, and we have one that's filled, and we do fill in at Morningside as able with the patrol. But yes,
Where is that crossing guard?
at Mr. Gilmore, help me. You just said it.
Tucker.
Tucker Elementary. And we had a long time one at Morningside, but she finished her education and is working full-time, so. And we've not had a lot of applicants, and the ones we have had were just, you know, we didn't find anybody we wanted to hire so far.
But you also have a uniformed police officer at middle school now.
Every day, yes, sir.
After morning and afternoon, do you not?
Yes, sir. But, I mean, it's just what Mr. Gilmore said, the traffic flow is heavy, and that's the way to get them in and out of there without, it's not so much for students on foot as it is for vehicle traffic.
Well, I know with this recommendation, though, is putting a crossing guard up there instead of a uniformed police officer.
Right, yes, sir, and it would be similar to the one that we had at
Matt Arthur.
Matt Arthur before that traffic signal went in, because they did more directing of traffic than they did crossing of children, so that, yes, sir.
How much money are we talking about?
That's a city manager question because it's,
You're probably talking about 7,500 to 9,000 a year per position, plus FICA, plus student home.
So that's, in the morning and afternoon.
Round figures 10,000,
Yeah.
and they want how many?
Well, we don't know for sure. Westfield's asking for one, and Tucker has one.
Is this for next 2 years, since they're plus in this?
Yes. Well, other than, I mean, if you adopt a policy, then for the existing locations, it would continue on through the end of this school year, whatever arrangement that
Is
we have.
Westfield asking for now?
As far as I know, yes.
yes, sir, they are. They've got a immediate problem. We've worked with them, and we came up with a solution last year for part of their morning issue, but they're still on Highway 41, and there's a lot of traffic, and DOT won't, you know, they've talked to DOT about various options, none of which have been approved. So having somebody to physically direct traffic is probably the best solution at this point in time.
A good portion, I was over there the other morning, a good portion, at least that morning, a good portion of Westfield traffic is its own traffic. I mean, you know, there's some on regular flowing traffic on 41, but most of it, it's its own traffic coming from south and from north, getting in and getting.
And it backs up pretty heavy in the afternoon too, doesn't it?
And one of the issues is when that long line of cars is there, then the vehicles trying to exit the parking lot onto 41 have, you know, their view is partially blocked just because of the line of vehicles being in the way.
There's not a lane, if you going from here to Westfield at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's not how do you, after those cars back up, where do they go? Stay in the street?
Yes, sir.
So if I was not going to Westfield, but I had to go out that way, I'm in a mess, aren't I?
Yes, sir.
For how long? 30 minutes, 40 minutes?
Depends on how quickly it's moving that day, I guess. I mean, they do run some of them in through the campus itself on some of the roads, but there's still more cars waiting to get in than there are ones capable of being accommodated inside.
You may remember we had a similar situation over at Mount Arthur until they added that additional.
You have one on 341 too, for that school back in there. But widen that road and it's not as bad now.
Also put a turn lane in there too, which helps a lot. So what is your preference?
I could go along with, if they pay half, we pay half.
Yeah, I will too.
Darn worse. Any other discussion on that item?
That's both public and private.
Yes.
That's everybody. Okay. You have what you still want? Sure. You'll get Mr. Jones?
Yes, sir, I'll do that.
I appreciate that.
I need some more steps today.
Item 3A,
Big bucks, he's earning it.
You gotta try to start something now.
What do you think?
You need to pay for it.
I can come back to the big kids table.
yeah. Welcome back, Mr. Jones. We're glad to have
You
you.
see when they go on vacation, so just stop.
Prince is here, Phyllis, come on.
She know better.
Item 3A2, after all that, is a response to the audit constructive suggestions. Mr. Gilmore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Elected officials, in your packet is also a response that I received from the Perry Area Convention and Visitors Bureau Authority relative to 4 points that were pointed out in their audit. The response is fairly typical of what you'll have from these smaller agencies, but it prompted me to think that there could be a better way without them having to hire a bunch of other people to take care of these issues. And that would be my recommendation to you all, that we strongly suggest that these component units, which would be the Convention Visitors Bureau and the Downtown Development Authority, have their books taken care of and maintained by the city. And we would provide that at no cost to them. The advantage with that is that removes some of the, like, you may have noticed, those mostly accounting terms I realize, about delay in accrued, payments and that type of stuff. That'll all be taken care of. Also, it will make it easier for our auditors, because you may remember the city auditor audits both of these bodies as well. And I think it'd be a deal that works out better for those organizations. It's very important, while they are legal entities, it's very important to remember that they are considered component units of the city. And so therefore, whatever they do, good or bad, directly reflects, on the city. And it's the city's responsibility to step in and correct. And I think that this would be a situation that would be beneficial for both bodies. They still have their own checking accounts, they still have all their own controls, they still make their own decisions. Everybody with me on that? It's just that instead of them, for example, having to hire a bookkeeper, they just get a printout like our other departments do.
So we'll handle all that, right?
Right.
How do you address the segregation of duties? Looking at that.
We would work on that. But there would be an advantage about a different body taking care of the actual bookkeeping. Although we're working on something. That may not totally be our way because it's small, so.
Yeah, there's only 3 people, but that's always a concern. I know they don't handle a whole lot of cash, so
Right.
it's not something that's always an audit concern when you have that.
But, some of that type of stuff would just automatically go away. Like their big payments are the ones that we send them on a monthly basis for the check. There wouldn't be any check going out on that if we were handling it. There'd just be a direct deposit processed internally. They don't do their, you may remember they had like a gift store over there. I'm not sure if they're still doing that or not, but it's not a whole much to that. As far as I know, they don't have any grants or anything, so it wouldn't be a big volume.
Questions? Mr. Gilmore? What's your preference?
Do whatever, do the suggestion.
Consensus is to accept Mr. Gilmore's recommendation for moving the accounting into our system. Thank you. Item 3A3 is continuing education. Mr. Gilmore.
Thank you. Elected officials, in your packet is a memo from me talking about continuing education. The city's current policy is that an employee who is interested in going on for continuing education, that is higher education, tech school or regular college or whatever, for a degree, that they have to initially pay and then the city will reimburse them assuming that they pass the course. I was approached by an employee who indicated that she would really like to continue her education, but she was not in a financial position in order to make that first go-around of the payment and get reimbursed. And she asked me if I would be able to make an exception for her, and the answer on that was no. One, manager doesn't have that type of power. Two, the manager would not recommend to you always start a process of just exceptions, because then it never ends, you never know what it was. The other big problem with this is I don't think it is something that the city should just, for example, put money aside, because you can have people come in, they'll sign up, they'll supposedly take the initial course, and then they don't pass it because their child got sick. They weren't able, whatever the case may be, and that just gets to be kind of a drain. The other important aspect with this program as it's initially set up is there's a benefit to us as employers about having people getting any type of higher education, but it's also a benefit to that person, and we like to have that as an initiative by them to start that. So, that being said, one alternative I did think about, and you may just want to ponder on this till next meeting or whatever, is that every one of our employees earns annual leave at a certain rate. And that is their money. They can use it for basically whatever time off they want to. And subject to caps, they are paid that out when they separate from the city. And so I was thinking, assuming that they would be willing, the person requested would be willing to enter into an agreement, then we could have an agreement and they could take that, some of their annual leave and pay that upfront cost. Now, if they were going to do that, then that annual leave would be added to whatever the next paycheck is. They'd have to pay the taxes for that. They'd have to sign an agreement saying that yes, they understood and they had that. If they used it and then didn't have any annual leave for vacation, they'd have to go on leave, authorized leave without pay. In other words, you don't come back and make up, what they lost because of their decision. But they would get reimbursed directly back to them, just like the standard, program.
And they could not be on probation with us.
That is correct. You can't participate in that program if you're on a probation period.
Are there any labor laws that might create a problem?
We can check with the city attorney. I'm not aware of any offhand, but we can check with the city.
And if they went and got a master's degree, and we paid for it, and they left us just as soon as they got the master's degree, do we have any
Yes.
provision in there for that?
Yes, several years ago, council adopted a policy about a repayment schedule based on how long ago it was that you got reimbursed. So in your particular case that you're talking about, Mr. Hunt, they went through, got their master's, and immediately left, they would have to pay us back for just about everything.
That's what
Right. If you used it and you got your degree, and maybe I forget the schedule, let's say, for example, 5 years had gone by, well, then you'd have very little or maybe nothing, because we had 5 years of benefit. We have enforced that, as city attorney will attest. We've gone after, employees, who have left and have not done anything.
Leave if they want to, but just pay us back.
Right.
I know, government has a contract there. They pay for your education. You got to give them so many years before you can do anything.
Right.
I don't know what we want to get into that.
No.
I think we have that. That's what I think you're saying.
No, they have to repay the costs. We don't say they have to stay.
Well, yeah, but I think if they leave the government, they have to pay.
Yeah, right.
It's like the same type of
They,
contract.
right, they got to serve, out the amount of time, whatever the cost was. They got to give that time back to you guys.
It's forgiven on a length of time
Right,
of service.
right.
Have you investigated what any other cities are doing in the same situation?
No. I mean, not yet, we can certainly follow up on it, if that's what you'd like to find out.
I think it's a good idea for everybody who wants to actually get in there and improve their education, and have the skills to move up, you know what I mean?
Okay, we'd be happy to check. I think the benefit that we provide is an excellent benefit. It's regrettable more of our employees don't take advantage of it, but they have their own reasons, and I understand that. With the, we keep talking about this, but with the younger generations coming up, this is going to be more and more important for us to have and to offer. But following up on William's point, I'll check to see what some of our other comparable cities are doing and that type of stuff, and get that to you, and let you know.
You want to delay the decision until our next work session on the first?
Yes, you have a chance, take a look and see.
I would encourage everybody to look at it, see if there are other alternatives that are found, so. Thank you, Mr. Gilmore, for bringing this session, because we do have to encourage all employees to get more education if there's a way we can do that, so. Appreciate that. Item 3A4 is proposed policy to require individual meters for commercial locations. Mr. Gilmore?
Thank you. Finally, Mayor and Council, from me in your packet is a memo recommending to you that we adjust our policy relative to meter installation to require each individual, this is on the commercial side, each individual location that can possibly either design or possibly subdivided later, that it has to have its own meter, either water sewer meter or a gas meter. The reason we're recommending that is, number one, particularly with the number of the fees and everything we have, it's a fairer process to spread those costs out. For example, Perry Marketplace or some of these other locations. The other thing that's important on this deal is that, as it stands right now, you can have one business or one tenant, unless they make some arrangement with the landlord, of having to pick up all of the storm water, all of the solid waste, all the fire protection fee for the whole series of units. Everybody with me on that? Because that's the only meter, and we go by the meter. The other thing that I think is important on that, so far we haven't had it. We've had it on the residential side of duplexes, but you can also have a situation where you have these different units, the businesses are in there and they're doing okay, except for the one business that has the meter, and that business splits or doesn't pay. So we come back in and we have to cut off the water. Well, then all these other businesses are out of luck. So what we're proposing to you is, if you agree, we'll have it effective immediately, is that anytime there's any new construction, for example, the old Shoney's, if you're old enough to remember that it was called Shoney's at one time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so they're dividing it up into 3 units. Okay, well, that would be a location that go from 1 meter under this policy require 3. Or if you come back and you do any alterations on any of these commercial places.
Like over,
Pardon?
like over.
Yes, then you'd have to add, meter for every one of those units.
And then more right, you know what I mean? If I'm going to come in that section, I need my own meter. I don't make a master meter that if I don't pay my bill, everybody else meter everybody else water get cut off. I wouldn't like that.
Yeah. I do have a question on Mr. Hunt's comment. Overton's Jewelry, are we going to require them to separate there in that alley on the Commerce side, Commerce Street side? But some of those businesses there have 1 meter right now, so they're doing.
We're not going to go retroactive for it. But if, for some reason, where Overton Jewelry is, at least my understanding is that's still the same building. It's renovated, but it's the same building, okay? So it would still use the same meter, that it had.
They're the only ones on that meter?
Pardon?
Or they're the only ones on that meter?
I don't know, I think so, for that location. But if for some reason someone's going to come back and subdivide that, assuming you adopt this policy, then they'd have to install another meter for that subdivided section. So this will not immediately address, because I'm not going to go retroactive like you're talking about, Mr. Hunt. Some of these other locations on Carroll Street that go way, way back,
No,
just
no.
need 1 meter.
The question there, I don't know the answer to Mr. Hunt's question, if there's somebody else on that meter that's in an adjacent building, if those buildings were ever one building, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
we'll check and see, I don't think so.
I don't think.
I think he was.
But I know they're remodeling, so if you can do something, now's the time to do it.
Any other discussion? So what's your pleasure? Consensus to start? Consensus to move forward, Mr. Gilmore?
Thank you.
Since this is the Mr. Gilmore show this evening, is there anything else that you have to bring before us?
No, sir.
No? Not for that. Item 4 is council member items. Mr. Hunt? Mr. King?
Someone about my team that, so green total that we put out, is every resident gonna get one?
Yeah, they should, I would
Yeah.
think, yes, they request one.
Okay, they got to request it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I
I
need.
mean, we're rapidly moving towards everybody getting one. But it is request rate.
The bottom told me people gotta read the bill, but ain't nobody read.
I didn't say that.
They just asked the question.
Sound great?
No.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Jackson? Our city attorney, do you have anything for us this evening?
Do I have anything?
I don't know, dude.
No, I don't think I do.
No?
We're moving forward with contracts
Okay.
on the downtown properties,
Good, thank you.
so that's it.
Assistant City Manager, Mr. Smith,
No, sir.
nothing at all? Thank you. Item 5 is department head items. Chief Parker.
Nothing tonight, sir, but I will just kind of give you an update on the weather. Chief Lynn and I attended the weather briefing this afternoon at 1 o'clock. And as of right now, the way the activity looks for central Georgia, we're in a slight risk area, which means we're probably going to have, there's a likelihood of some high winds, some hail as this storm kind of comes our way. We're hoping it kind of goes around us here in Perry, but should it get worse this afternoon, they said the likelihood of tornadoes would be later in the storm as opposed to early. So just be aware, watch your local news, or listen to the weather radio, whatever the case may be there, and just pay attention, be aware of what's going on, and stay safe.
Thank you. Appreciate the update.
That's all I have.
Mr. Wood, anything from community development?
No, sir.
Mr. Smith, anything from economic development or public works?
No, sir.
No?
Not tonight.
Mr. Dye from Leaves Services?
Just a little bit of stuff. It's one of my favorite time of year. Everything's starting to come alive and flowers and all this stuff. Our guys, our maintenance supervisor, Mr. Brown, and our new landscape manager have been partnering and working together since she came on board, and that has been going splendidly. You'll see some little projects, if you know what to look for, out and around town that they're doing, and just kind of making things start to look a little sharper. One of them in particular that Mr. Brown told me about this morning, I was out for several days last week, was they're changing out the place marker signs in the cemetery, the new ones that are new with the city logo, and all that's looking really nice. So they've been putting some effort into those areas this past year. Get a chance to them just swing by and have a look. Things starting to look good.
All of our parks, our pocket parks are looking really, really good. I was commenting on that to Mr. Gilmore today, looking at Nunn Park. They've gone in and cut all the vines and everything. So they're doing a tremendous amount of work that you just typically don't, you won't notice or don't see. And
So that kind of came to my attention today, and I'm just going to share it with you guys.
so thank them for us.
I will.
There's a lot of effort going in out there.
Absolutely. That's it. Sir.
Bring us up to date on the tennis courts.
The county, I spoke with them last week, and the engineer over that project told me that within the next week or two, they will be finished with their portion. So what the next step will be when that portion's finished is we'll go back out to bid, which they're ready to do as soon as it's finished. And then that's when they'll start doing the second professional, all the stuff that'll make a tennis court. So you'll see when those last stakes, once they're disappeared, that's when and as long as the weather cooperates. They can't grade, like if it rains heavy tonight, then of course it will grade for a few days. So they're close with their portion, and that's exactly what they had told us. They said that come around spring with their deadline, and they've been working on it. So they're close. And then the next phase will be with our architects.
Thank you.
Okay? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Lane, anything from the police department?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council, something for your consideration, if you will. We received a request today from Mr. McLeod from First Baptist Church, requesting closure of First Street from Main Street and all the way to the entrance, the exit from Anytime Fitness. This is just short of Swift Street. And of that first portion of Carroll Alley, on Wednesday nights from 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. to accommodate their youth program that is outside. I guess it's their AWANA program, and here's just a quick diagram. We didn't have much notice of this, and certainly no time to get on the agenda. But they're asking that that be done with no end date in sight, except for the fact that they say they're planning on putting a fence up, and hopefully that'll be done within a month. We talked to them about this issue last year, and they said they were gonna put a fence up, and I guess cold weather happened, and now it's back to being warm weather again. And so we got the request today, and I apologize for bringing it to you in this manner, but there was no time to add it to the agenda, so Mr. Goodwin just asked me to bring it up in the work session.
Thoughts?
Tell us what we were told we would have to do last year.
What the discussion that, as I recall last year, was that to make that, y'all were worried about the kids playing in that, which is basically a vacant lot that the church owns, and running out into the streets. It's bordered on one side by Carroll Alley and on the other side by First Street. And so, what I recall is that the best solution was to put a fence up there, and I believe in the meantime, the church had adults monitoring the area. So, the question's been asked again about closing the street. I don't recall that.
So we told them to put up a fence last year, and now, all of a sudden, they want it up now.
Well, they're just asking for the street closure now for safety.
But didn't you say they were gonna let them put up a fence?
That's what Mr. McLeod indicated, that they intend to put up a fence, but he doesn't know when that'll be done, but hopefully within a month.
Well, I'm a member of the First Baptist, I'm all for the kids, but I don't think they're going about it the right way. They said they were gonna put up a fence last year, they ought to have it up by now.
I'd be hesitant to do it without a deadline.
I think we took a pretty firm stance, as I remember last year, so we know we weren't gonna start closing city streets based upon that, because we have that situation all over town. And, you know, those are, especially from 5 o'clock to 8:30, 3.5 hours of closing it every week. And so,
That's the only concern I have, like you said, that, if, until they give us a definite time, and they put the fence up, the road does not need to be closed, you know what I mean? Because there's through traffic coming through, you know, so we don't need to agree that, okay, you can put the fence up. Like I said, we told them last year, I'm with Mr. Hunt right now, I know he's a member of the church, they hadn't done it yet, and they come back with the same proposal, wants to say the same thing for them. How long before they actually put the fence up?
They won't need to.
I don't think we need to close city
I'm just
streets unless we do it all.
so we're not shooting anybody.
Yeah.
So, consensus, I guess, is, do I hear around the table is denying the request until such a time as we have some very definite information about what they are or not gonna do, and then we would take it under consideration at that point? No?
No.
No?
Just, no.
No, on the closing of the street.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure, and so the answer is no on the closing of the street.
Years ago, for most of y'all's times, maybe not,
No.
Mr. Randall, but we closed that street when the church was on the other side of the old building. We closed that street. And the lady ran into the fence that we closed it with, all it was a wire running across it. And she sued the church and the city. So,
Did she win?
huh?
Did you win?
I can't remember, she didn't win much. But, we don't wanna close the city street.
Well, I'm assuming that's why y'all have to approve all street closures. We'll convey that back to Mr. McLeod. I did have a couple of other things. We got a final count on the Family Motor Coach Association. It's 2,700 units. And they're pulling out today. I'm sure some of them left yesterday and some of them won't leave till tomorrow. And the Good Sam's Club comes in behind them. And I also wanted to mention that last week we responded, if you remember a while back, we trained some trainers and then we delivered diversity training that's called RITE, R-I-T-E, to the police and fire department. We sponsored that training last week. It's a 2-day train-the-trainer class, and we had one firefighter go, 2 more police officers, and then trainers from around the state. And as a result of that training, the sheriff's office is going to roll it out to their people. LaGrange PD is going to train all 120 of their people. And the state Department of Community Supervision is going to roll it out to their people statewide. And we were the first agency in Georgia to adopt this training, and it's taken off across the country. The NFL Players Association, they even reached out to them and had them come to a class during the Pro Bowl this past year, or whenever the Pro Bowl was, and the past Pro Bowl. So, wanted to pass that on to you. It's, I think it's turned out to be a good thing.
That's what's up.
We'll go through and do the training again.
Sounds like Perry PD is on the leading edge.
I know that's right, that's a plus.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Chief. Department of Administration, Ms. King? Yes, sir.
Mr. President, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, Chief Lynn reminded me of one thing that I think would be important for you to know. Mr. McLeod from the First Baptist Church actually came to our office this morning to find out what they need to do to relocate that house on the corner of Main and, what is it, 2nd or 3rd Street? 2nd Street. And he'll need a certificate of appropriateness. I gave him that application. So just so you're aware of that, that will be coming forward, I suspect.
We expect it. Anything from the news department back there for the good of the cause? Thank you. Ms. Palmer?
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to let you all know that the first new employee orientation was last week. It was held on Tuesday, and I think it was deemed a success. We had about 20 employees go through it. We started here in the council chambers with about an hour presentation from all the department heads, and then we took a tour of most of the city facilities and went by a couple of the parks, and I think they really enjoyed it and learned more than they thought they were going to learn, probably just about the different locations and what they do, that there's more there sometimes than they think that's there that goes on. And then we finished up here with lunch, and Mayor Pro Tem talked to them for a few minutes as well about mayor and council and that structure. So overall went well. It went from about, as far as the employees, people that have been here about a year to about 2 months. So it was a wide variety, which is kind of good. Some had a little more experience than others. And we'll continue to do it on a quarterly basis and hopefully keep circling back, and maybe eventually all employees can go through it as long as there's availability. So.
Thank you. That is a really good course. I would compliment you guys for putting that together, because comments I've heard from people who were talking about they come to work and go to work in their office and they don't understand how that relates to the other people and what they're doing. And they, on that mayor and council presentation, they were right on the edge of their chair. It was so exciting. Trying to get out. This is a quick answer. Is there anything else to come before us? I don't think I missed anybody else. I'm sorry, Ellen.
That's okay.
You got you.
Yeah, it gave us the weather report. There's the tornado report. So. If there's nothing else to come before us, we'll stand adjourned till tomorrow afternoon, 5 o'clock.